Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video from Aman Talks NRL SuperCoach. Today we're going to be taking a look at round 14 trade targets and burning questions. Just a quick FYI though, this video obviously is going to be recorded prior to State of Origin Game 1. There'll be a lot of fallout from that in terms of injuries, recovery, whether guys are going to back up. So we will discuss that in a little bit in this video, but I think what I will try to do is on Friday, could do either a video or a live stream, just having a bit more updated information prior to lockout. So just wanted to put that out there, that a lot of that information that we talk about in this video might become out of date because of the results or effects of State of Origin Game 1, up the Blues. But firstly, let's get into how I went quickly in round 13. So obviously round 13 was the big bye week. I ended up scoring 927, which I was very happy with. It was a big green arrow up to about 5.8k. So thankfully that's, I think, now 3 green arrows on the bounce. So getting the rank up to where I'm in a little bit happier with. Low on trades though, only 15, and I potentially could even do another 2 this week, but still pushing hard. We will have to try to consolidate trades, but I'm happy with how my team is looking at the moment, and I've also got some okay numbers for round 17 as it stands, and that will be a big focus of this week's video based on some of the questions that I've seen coming through on Twitter and also on YouTube as well. So just quickly taking a look at that Origin piece. So I just put a quick timeline together of, how are the days and recovery looking for some of these State of Origin guys. Looking at the first one there, which is the Friday game, which is the Cowboys taking on the Dragons. If you've got the likes of a Ruben Cotter, maybe a Val Holmes, if you've still got a Nanai, I don't really expect these guys to be playing. The Cowboys are in a very nice position on the ladder. The Dragons are not the toughest opponent to come up against. So I think the Cowboys will afford to rest some of their stars. Now, I wouldn't be selling Cotter, I think, this week if I could avoid it, just because I feel like last week was the right week to do it. Because I do think Cotter is probably a season keeper. He's averaging around 65, and he's been an absolute monster. It really comes down to if you need that money and you have to sell Cotter to get it, then I think it's fine to sell, because I do think that he will get his minutes managed, or maybe even a complete rest in round 14. And the same could happen in round 18 as well, where I believe the Cowboys are the first game after State of Origin Game 3. But he does have handy duel, so my preference would be to keep him. But if you are looking to sell Cotter and you don't really have any other way to make value or make money, or you've got a decent number of trades still, maybe say you've got more than 16, 17 trades, then I'd probably say it's maybe just about okay to do it. But otherwise I would try to hold on to him. Now, the Saturday and Sunday game, we probably would see further rest as well for some key Supercoach guys. Now, Tino and Cam Murray, probably not as relevant for the Titans versus Rabbitohs match, just because Murray was injured in the lead up to Origin, so I don't think many people currently own him. Now, the Roosters Storm game is going to be a massive one, though, for State of Origin implications. So, Tedesco and Tupou, I do expect to back up just for the fact that they're playing in the backs, and it is a big game against Melbourne. Losing last week was not ideal against the Raiders as well. So I feel like Trent Robertson is going to try to want to get his best team on the field if he can. Lindsay Collins isn't as relevant for Supercoach. Looking at the Storm, it's really about Munster and Grant. Now, Munster has got a pretty good record of actually backing up from State of Origin, so I do think that he will play. Harry Grant is the big one, though. Coming off the bench, I would suspect he'll play maybe 55 to 60 minutes in Game 1. And then, he has been named to start, but I think there is a good chance on game day he will go either to the bench or maybe even completely out of the side, because Brandon Smith is a very capable replacement there. So Harry Grant is definitely going to be a big watch that we're going to have to see how many minutes he plays and then how he pulled up as well after Game 1. Xavier Coates and Kafusi probably not as relevant. For the Broncos-Raiders game, so we've got the likes of Payne Haas, Pat Carrigan have been named to start as well for the Broncos, so those are 2 forwards. Interestingly enough, Kurt Capewell, though, wasn't named. He's been completely rested by the look of it. So that probably gives you an idea that, Walters is going to try to play the likes of a Haas and a Carrigan. Selwyn Cobbo and Katoni Staggs, given that they're players in the backs, they're probably more likely to back up as well if you do own them. And the likes of Jack White and Papali'i for the Raiders, again, both of these guys probably not as Supercoach relevant. Sunday is going to be a big day as well, mainly for the Panthers. So the likes of Cleary, Luai, To'o, Isaiah Yeo, they're all fairly relatively, relevant Supercoach players. Now, Stephen Crichton and Liam Martin, not as much, but I do think that there could be potential rests for the likes of Cleary and Luai, just accounting for the fact that they are versing the Knights, who are not the toughest opposition. So I do think there is scope for Cleary and Luai to be rested. So definitely for anyone who's owning Cleary, Ezra Mam, he's going to be a big popular backup option, I think, this week, given his low break-even, and he has been named. So just think about that. If you are looking to trade in Ezra Mam, there might be a chance that you actually have to rely on him this week, and you just have to make that decision if you're happy enough to do that as well. Nico Hines is 18th man, so I think he should be fine to back up as well, as does Cherry Evans. Cherry Evans almost always backs up for Manly. Now, the Monday game is it's not 4 days, it's 5 days break from game 1, so apologies for the little typo there. But I think that's enough rest for the likes of a Ryan Madison in particular, I think from a Supercoach perspective. And so I think if you own Ryan Madison, I think you're fine to hold him. I don't think he's going to be too affected by Origin, obviously notwithstanding any potential injuries there. So we did just quickly talk about him, but Ezra Mam is probably the biggest cheapie buy of the week, maybe of the season, with his minus 109 break even. It's just a little bit clouded in terms of his position and security in the team. So Tyson Gamble is reported to have some kind of lower leg soreness, which suggests that Ezra Mam hasn't won that spot completely on merit yet. Ideally, you'd like to see, Tyson Gamble say number 14, and then therefore you'd have some confidence that Mam is the long-term choice ahead of him. Now, I think Ezra Mam he's shown pretty good talent, I think, in the first 2 rounds that he's played. So I would hope that is his spot. The fact that he's got a minus 109 break even means he just really has to step with the field, and he's going to earn close to 100k, which generally is the kind of benchmark you'd say is it worth the trade in. Now, the fact that he is in the halfback spot means that you're going to really have to trade him out again in the future. I think you're going to want to trade out either to upgrade to, a Teddy at fullback via duels, or maybe to a gun like a Jerome Hughes or a Mitchell Moses, or maybe even a Nico Hines if you don't own him just yet in the season. So I would definitely think closely about it, because I don't think it's a slam dunk for the sake that, his position is not secure. I'm probably going to buy Ezra Mam, I think, this week. The money that it lets me afford just lets me do some other upgrades nicely elsewhere in my team. And I think I am low on trades, but I think he should hopefully make enough money. Fingers crossed that he doesn't just play the one game, and then we can maybe trade him out for a bit of a profit. Also thinking about that, that money that he can raise hopefully might be helpful in getting the likes of Ryan Pappenhausen back, because he's also at a very expensive price. So that's kind of my couple of reasons why I'm going for Ezra Mam, but I won't deny that there's no risk involved in that. Now, Michael Molo from the Dragons is another cheapie who is being bought this week. I don't like this one. He does have a minus 37 break even, but I think that there are likes of Jaden Sewer, Josh Maguire, Josh Kerr. There's a few forwards for the Dragons who I think can very easily take a spot, and I don't think he's going to get promoted to a starting role. I think he will largely stay on the bench, and I feel like that could become a bit of an auto emergency nightmare down the track. So Molo I don't actually recommend as a buy, but Mam I think is a perfectly good option to go for this week. Now that we're looking ahead to round 17 and the second bye week, we can start to forget about our round 13 options that we all piled into. So I think this is a big discussion point for this week. Who are the round 13 sells? And I think the even bigger question is, what's the priority and order of actually when do we sell these guys? So you can see just below me, I've put a bit of a indicative list together of my potential order of priority to sell. So Suwali at the top is a bit interesting because he has actually been okay this season, but it's the fact that he has got the Storm, the Eels, and then the Panthers, and then it's the bye. He has got a relatively high break-even of 75 as well, so I feel like it's okay to cash in on him now. He could be a decent, 5th, 6th, 7th centre wing option for the run home, but even the Roosters run home, they do have some good games, but they also do have some tough games. So I feel like you're not going to be maybe playing him enough to get the value out of holding him. So I'm actually looking at maybe selling Suwali this week for an Ezra Mam via duels, and that raises a lot of money to upgrade to another centre wing in my team. I think next on this list is Tuipulotu. Now, Tuipulotu does have a good matchup this week in the Tigers, but I'm more looking at this from the fact that he does have a high break-even of 85. He's probably almost peaked in price, and after this week, Manly do have the Cowboys and then the Storm, and then it's the bye. So again, I feel like, yes, I could maybe wait a week on it, but I'm thinking maybe I sell Tuipulotu this week just to realize that peak price on him and upgrade to another genuine gun, round 17 centre wing option. And so here, I would just put him just behind Suwali, just because he does have a better matchup this week. If you wanted to play one of them two, you'd probably play Tuipulotu over Suwali. After that, I've got some of the more cheapy options. So I've got Valea because I think, he's got this injury. You're not going to look to play him. So I think he's definitely one that you can easily sell. And then I've just ordered Karaz above Cooler for the fact that he's got the slightly higher break-even and he doesn't have as easy of a matchup. He's got the Eels this week compared to Cooler, who does have the Tigers. And Cooler's got a break-even of 26, which is probably more easily manageable for him to actually achieve compared to someone like a Karaz. So that's why I've ordered Karaz just above Cooler in terms of the sells. I've got Max King after that. I think Max King is looking less of a priority sell than any of these other guys that I've just mentioned. For the fact that he's got an 18 break even and the front row forward position, you can see I've also added a row which says position rank. So Max King, according to the NRL SuperCoach website, is ranked about 15th. Now, I would actually say, realistically, you're not going to be loading up on the top 4 front row forward. So Max King, while he's starting, he's been a pretty solid option who can pump out about 50 to 55. And I think that can actually be a very handy cover if you've got the likes of a Payne Haas. Maybe he ends up going to the bench and you might not want to play him. You can play a Max King in his place. So King, I don't even think is really that much of a sell at the moment. Maybe in a few weeks, his break even gets a lot higher than we can think about it. But for now, he's good front row forward coverage. And the last on the list I've actually got is Ewan Aitken. Now, I know the run for the Warriors is not very good with the Sharks and then the Panthers before the Tigers. For me, though, Aitken has proven for the majority of the season to be a very solid 60-point averaging option. And he's got the dual second row forward and centre wing eligibility. And I feel like having to be able to plug that in either of those two positions to cover yourself is something handy. Now, I will also reserve judgment on this because Josh Curran has been named for the Warriors. Now, I'd be interested to see what the minutes rotation looks like. If it looks like Aitken either gets moved to centre or he loses playing the 80 minutes, then I think his value decreases quite a bit. And then I think he probably is more of a sell. But for now, as it stands, I do think that he's probably better to hold than all of these other guys. And that's my kind of ranking of how I would prioritize selling them. So for example, this week, I might even sell both Suwali and Tuipulotu just because they also are higher value in the 400k range. So you can get more money from selling them. Now, a couple of other round 13 potential sells is May and Isaac Tango. So I'm going to try to pronounce his name correctly after hearing it on Bloke in the Bar. So the draw for the Panthers is quite nice. You know, you've got the Knights, the Warriors, and then you've got the Roosters and then the bye. But then you've got the Tigers again and then the Sharks. For me, though, I don't see either of these two guys as sells. If I had to sell one of them, I'd be selling Tango before Taylor May, just because Taylor May is averaging like 71 points. I think he's a genuine season keeper. But again, Tango does have that second row forward, centre wing eligibility. He's playing on the left edge of the best team attacking-wise in the competition. I'm going to try to hold both if I can. They've both got pretty solid base points, as you can see there as well. So they're going to give you pretty solid scores throughout the rest of the season. So I think there are much more options that you can sell. Like I'd sell probably an Aitken over a Tango, for instance, just because he is playing in the best team in the competition. It kind of boils down to that. He scored 100 plus against Melbourne. So again, it kind of shows you that these guys are a bit more matchup proof and you can play them with confidence in more games than say the likes of an Aitken or a Suwali, for example. So I'm trying to hold both of these guys if I can. I understand people might want to sell them, but I feel like surely if you've loaded up on the likes of Suwali, Kula, Karaz, I think all these guys are much bigger sells than the likes of a Taylor May or an Isaac Tango. So now that we've covered off, you can make money by buying Ezra Mann and you can get rid of your cheap centre wings from round 13. You're looking to use that money and you're probably going to want to beef up your round 17's centre wing position. Now, this is one of the biggest talking points I've seen coming into this week. Which one do you buy? Now, I put these slides together yesterday, but my thoughts have actually slightly changed as I've recorded here at 11:45 on Wednesday morning. I actually think Mulatalo is my number one choice, just above Campbell Graham. I was thinking Graham coming into this week just because he's a very solid option. You can see his base and power average is 48, so he's got a really high floor. The Rabbitohs do have a very nice 4-game stretch coming up as well. You know, the Titans, the Dragons, the Eels, and then the Knights. That's a really great run of games coming up. And then they do also play the Bulldogs in round 18. After that, though, Campbell Graham and the Rabbitohs draw does become a little bit tougher for the rest of the season. Mulatalo's, though, is a little bit better. And Mulatalo's next 3 is also pretty spectacular. The Warriors, the Titans, and the Bulldogs, you'd argue those are the 3 best teams to target from an attacking point of view. He does play Melbourne in round 17, but remember, this is going to be Melbourne Storm without the likes of a Harry Grant, Cam Munster. Still going to be a tough opposition, but not as tough, you'd say. So for those couple of reasons, I've thought maybe Mulatalo is actually the better option to go for this week. I know he does have a higher break-even as well than Campbell Graham, but you'd say he's probably got the higher upside than someone like a Campbell Graham. Campbell Graham has gone big just in the last week when he scored 119 points in round 12. But Mulatalo has already got a couple of 100-plus point scores, I believe, this year. He's got a couple of 80-point scores as well. His floor is lower, base and power of 34, but that's still not a horrible floor. And when you look at that run coming up, and he has got the upside, that's why I've slightly changed my thinking and putting Mulatalo just above Campbell Graham. For me, it also depends on my team structure. Now, I've already got someone like a Lomax, I've got a Ruben Garrick, I've got a Joey Manu, I've got a Taylor May. I feel like these are all fairly solid options that I can rely on week in, week out. Mulatalo, though, could be that guy that I can take a chance on who's got slightly lower floor, but a really, really high upside, because I've got maybe other guys in that position who can cover his lower scores because they've all got pretty high floors themselves. That's why I'm thinking about maybe going with Mulatalo just ahead of Campbell Graham. Now, Alex Johnston is in a similar bracket to Mulatalo, that he's got the high upside, lower floor. But for the fact that his end of season draw is tough, I see him as someone that you're going to want to trade in, but then also trade out again. Campbell Graham, I could see, is a very solid season keeper, so I don't think you need to necessarily trade him out again, because in those tough games, he's got a pretty high floor that he can compensate against. Mulatalo, with his slightly better run for the rest of the season, though, I can trade him in, and I think, barring injury, with confidence, think that I can hold him feasibly for the rest of the season. So that also works out well for myself, given that I've got low trades. Now, Lomax, I'd rank just below those other three, mainly for the fact that his draw, I don't think for the next month, is actually that good. The Cowboys, I think, is tough, even without their origin stars. The Rabbitohs at home is okay. It's not ideal. Then you've got the Raiders, who are looking a lot better. And then you've got the Broncos, who are still a pretty decent team. Even without their origin stars, they've proven that they can win, even without the likes of Adam Reynolds. So I don't actually think the Dragons' run is that good on paper. He has done well recently, but he was versing the likes of the Bulldogs and then the Warriors. Before that, Lomax was kind of hitting around 55 to 60. So I don't think he's going to hurt you if you avoid him for the next few weeks. I do think that in round 17, he will be a good purchase that you can run home for the rest of the season. But I think if you're looking to buy one this week, I would prefer Mulatalo, Graham and Johnston, because they've all got better short-term draws. I've got a couple of more pod options here as well. Herbie Farnworth, he's been really solid, a 3-round average of 77, 5-round average of 68, and is a little bit cheaper than these other guys as well. So if you are looking for a pod, you could go for a Herbie. The only issue again is his draw. The Raiders, the Storm, then the Cowboys before the Dragons in round 17. He feels like someone that you'd probably want to buy in round 17 himself. Now, Mike Acevo, he's coming back fit this week. Apparently, he's been killing it in the New South Wales Cup as well. It does feel like a bit of a risk going for him early, but he does have the Bulldogs. So again, he's going to fall into this category of, if you've got other solid guys, you might be able to take the risk on a low floor, high upside guy like a Mike Acevo. I personally don't think I've got the cojones to go for Mike Acevo this week. I think I'm probably going to stick with a Mulatalo or Campbell Graham. And for the reasons I mentioned, I'm slightly leaning towards Mulatalo. A couple of other guys I just want to quickly shout out as well. Siva Talakai, obviously he benefits from the same good draw that the Sharks do. So if you haven't got Talakai, he's around 550k. So he's obviously going to be a great purchase as well. This is kind of the reason why I've decided to hold him, and he'll be a good option for round 17. And don't also forget Will Penasini. Will Penasini has been pretty solid the last few weeks as well. You can see the Eels draw of the Bulldogs, the Roosters, Rabbitohs and Tigers. It's pretty good. And then I think that Tigers game in round 17 is one of the better matchups you can target in that particular bye week. So I'm just saying, don't forget about the likes of Penasini. But I do think these other guys that I mentioned are probably maybe slightly ahead of them in the pecking order. Now, a couple of 5/8s that we want to talk about is Cody Walker or Dylan Brown. If you had to buy one of these two, who are you going to be buying for round 17 coverage? And realistically as well, probably for the rest of the season, if you are low on trades and you're just looking to buy one that you can run home for the rest of the season. My favorite is Dylan Brown. I don't think I've made it a secret on this channel. I own Dylan Brown. I've owned him since the beginning of the season. I sold Cody ahead of Dylan Brown to get in Cameron Munster. So I think I've kind of made my views clear on why I would rather go for Dylan Brown. He's just got a high floor. A base of 37 for a 5/8 is just ridiculous. If you add in his base and his base attack, so his base power, that average creeps up to about 48. So he's punching out about minimum of a 50 each week without any attacking stats. I would say Cody does have the better short-term upside because he's got the better draw, but his back end of the season is pretty tough. From round 19, he's got the Storm, and that'll be when the Storm are probably likely all back fit from State of Origin, and I think you're probably going to want to trade out Cody Walker at that point in time. Whereas with Dylan Brown, with the higher floor and the fact that his run home for the rest of the season is not as difficult as the Rabbitohs, he's that guy that I think if you are low on trades and you just need to get one for the rest of the season, Dylan Brown is probably the guy that I would be buying. If you've got a few extra trades up your sleeve, or maybe a further back and you need to chase points in the short term, I'd maybe go with Cody because he's also got a pretty healthy 5-round average of 74. And I think with their run coming up all the way through to round 18, you might be able to bank some nice points in the short term before maybe looking to flip Cody Walker from round 19 onwards. But yeah, low on trades, I think stick with Dylan Brown. He's probably more of the season keeper. I think he is the second highest averaging 5/8 as well behind Cam Munster. Short-term points though, I would look for Cody Walker, who has also got that upside. Now, also looking at some round 17 hookers, so I've got Cam McInnes, Brandon Smith and Reed Marnie. I'm personally not a fan of Reed Marnie that much. I also just think that if hypothetically Queensland were to win the series after the first 2 games, and then in game 3, maybe they throw Reed Marnie a bone and say, look, you can go play game 3 because he's always been on the cusp of it, but through injury and the fact that Ben Hunt and Harry Grant are great options as well, just hasn't been able to make it. So I feel like Reed Marnie, if I was buying I'd only buy in the actual bye week of round 17. So I think McInnes and Brandon Smith realistically is where you're going to be looking. Now, McInnes is at 556k, pretty good price to lock in someone who's a pretty solid mid-60s averaging player, which I kind of view as a season keeper average. Now, NRL Physio was saying on his Magic Sponge podcast that he looks at guys returning from their ACL in a Supercoach context. He likes to look at their base power averages, and he noted that Cam McInnes' base power average has been creeping up in the past few weeks as well, which is just generally a good sign that he's kind of being a bit more impactful in his runs and his tackles. So he's able to break the tackles a little bit more as well. So probably shows a good recovery sign from his ACL. And I think with the Sharks, they're still missing Dale Finucane. They don't have really big minute players, I think, on their bench at the moment with the likes of Andrew Fifita and a couple of other guys who I can't remember, apologies. So I think McInnes is going to be a pretty solid option. At break-even of 33, you're probably going to be able to pick him up at one of his lower prices, I think, for the rest of the season. And it's just a very solid option for round 17. And look, with the good draw coming up as well, he could also get some attacking stats. He got some attacking stats against the Roosters in round 12. So he'd be my preference for just a straight season keeper. Brandon Smith, though, if you're looking for a more budget option, if we think that Harry Grant is going to get the rests, then Brandon Smith becomes automatically a decent option at his price. I mean, it's a very appealing price. He just hasn't shown enough for me this season, though. So I know it's a big money gap of 200k, but I'd still probably prefer to go for someone like a McInnes. Now, someone might ask, would you go Cotter to McInnes? It feels tough because I do think Cotter is a season keeper, but if he's your only avenue to a McInnes, I don't think it's a bad move, but it does feel a bit sideways in that I do think McInnes lacks some upside. I know he scored a try last week, but he generally will be that guy who punches out 60 to 65 a week. I think Cotter can do about the same. So I feel like if you are looking to get McInnes, I would try to upgrade, maybe if you're upgrading someone like a round 13 option, maybe like not even like a Appy Coruscant. I don't think I'd be selling Coruscant this week because Panthers draw is also good. So I feel like McInnes, yes, he's a good option to buy this week. I think he's the second most purchase player this week, but I still think you can afford to wait on it, and I wouldn't be having to force him in because I think that he won't be that guy who punishes you. But look, he's going to be a great option, averaging around 65 points, I think, for the remainder of the season. Now, we'll take a quick look at round 14 captaincy as well, but again, a lot of this will come into the fact that State of Origin hasn't happened yet. Injuries to key guys like Nathan Cleary and Nicho Hynes will definitely change this. But at the moment, if you're looking for a VC, I think Scotty Drinkwater and Cody Walker are probably the best VC options earlier in the week, just for the fact that they've got the Dragons and then the Gold Coast Titans respectively. So two very good matchups. I think Drinkwater's been an absolute tear recently, so I really like him for a vice captain. You could go for Ruben Garrick, who's coming up against Tigers, punched out 99 last week, so definitely has got that upside as well. I'm personally looking at the moment, a VC on Nathan Cleary, though. So I've got Nathan Cleary against the Knights, who can very easily score like 150 if he is named to play. If we get some word that he isn't named to play, for my own team, I'll probably stick the vice captain on a Ruben Garrick, just because I don't own the likes of a Scott Drinkwater or a Cody Walker. And for captaincy purposes, I'm looking at someone from either the Sharks or the Parramatta Eels, who've got the Warriors and then the Bulldogs respectively. I can't look past Nicho Hynes though, really, because I think playing 18th man, unless he plays a lot of minutes in State of Origin, I think he'll back up and he'll be fairly fresh, you'd say. And against the Warriors, who just look down and out, unfortunately, they sacked their coach, and they've just been leaking so many points recently. I think it's a game that's made for Nicho Hynes to do well in. So for me, I haven't looked past Nicho Hynes as captain. You could take a punt on Monday on the likes of a Dylan Brown or an IPAP pool against the Bulldogs. But I personally think that Sharks-Warriors game is the game to target, which is also why I'm thinking about maybe going for Mulatalo myself this week as well. But captaincy purposes, I think I can't go past Nicho Hynes. So a quick shout out as well to the group league. So Bazza, the Wickinator, he scored 1,397 in round 13, and he's not a sniper team, which is awesome to see. Overall rank of 11.3k, but that's an absolutely huge week in a bye week. And I just wanted to give a quick shout out as well, in particular to Alex from the Bearded Clams and Shane from Gilly's crew. They're both ranked in the top 10. Alex is second overall and Shane is 9th, which is actually insane. Very, very jealous of those rankings as well. So keep it up, guys. Hope the videos and the things that we discuss are helping you guys out. But look, you must be doing something right, because being in the top 10 is quite phenomenal. And shout out to everyone else who's doing well in the group league, in Rob, James, Samuel, Chris, Backy, James, Buzz, and Vaughn. They're all either sitting in the top 100 or in the top 140. So all absolutely killing it. So I quickly would show my team as well, what I'm looking to do potentially for this week, but I will obviously caveat that State of Origin is going to have big implications on what might happen with my team. So at the moment, I've got Coruscant McInnes, I've got IPAP and Payne Haas and my front row forward. Second row forward, I've got Crichton, Olukwatu, Isaac Dungo, Sifa Talakai in reserve. I've got Nico Hines captain, Cleary reserve, Munster and Dylan Brown. And then in the centre wing, I've got Manu, Lomax, Taylor May, Tuipulotu. And then I've got Ruben Garrick vice captain as well. I just wanted to read that out as well for any audio listeners. So what I'm looking to do this week is potentially take out both Suwali and Tuipulotu for those reasons I mentioned earlier. Now to get Ezra Mam, I can do some dual switching here. So I can switch Kula to my centre wing. And then that opens up a fullback spot that I can then sub Nico Hines down to. That means I can get in a halfback. So I'd get in Ezra Mam here. Now, again, this is the risk that I was mentioning earlier. If you buy Ezra Mam and Nathan Cleary gets a rest, we're going to have to rely on Ezra Mam to play this week. So that's just something to keep in mind if you are looking to buy him this week. And now what I can do with that money is also upgrade to a better centre wing option. So 722k basically means I can get anyone. And so I think Mulatalo is probably the guy that I think I'm going to go for. I believe he's slightly lower owned than Campbell Graham, which does help out things as well. That leaves 115k in the bank. So raises some funds that hopefully can let me get to Pappenhausen in a couple of weeks' time as well. And so if I do that, I'll quickly show you what my team will look like once I've set it up again properly. So I would keep McInnes as a reserve. And I will also mention this week, it is very important to set up your team to cater for any potential State of Origin restings. So what I mean by that is guys in your team who are playing earlier in the week. So say, for example, if you look below me, Cowboys, Dragons is the first game of the round. Then you've got the Parramatta Eels, and then the Bulldogs is the later game in the round. Put those guys who are playing later in the week on your reserves if you can. It just gives you extra flexibility that if you have a late out, you can switch a reserve off someone else and to not have to cop an auto emergency. So I wouldn't have Ezra Mam as my captain, that's for sure. I would maybe put Cleary vice captain actually in this situation because I have got the flexibility to put Hines as captain here. Now, instead of playing Kula, I'd obviously switch them and play Garrick in my centre wing. And I'd have Dylan Brown as one of my reserves. Mulatalo would definitely be one of my reserves. And then I have Talakai, and then probably either becomes McInnes or Aiken. I think McInnes has probably got the slightly higher floor. And that would be my team for this week, more or less. So Coruscant, McInnes, IPAP, and Payne Haas. I've got some coverage on the bench there with Max King. If there's some talk that Payne Haas misses the Broncos game or maybe gets rested. Then in my second row forward, I've got Isaac Dungo, Olukwatu, Angus, Crichton, Sifa Talakai, which I'm happy enough with. Cleary and Munster and Dylan Brown, all very happy to play them this week, obviously. Then my centre wing, I'm looking a lot stronger in now. I'm quite happy with it. So I've got Garrick, Manu, Lomax, Taylor May, and Mulatalo. And then I've got Nico Hines as captain. And so even if I just take a quick look at my round 17 numbers, so I'll have McInnes number 1, maybe Leo Thompson as 2. I'll have Talakai 3, Howarth maybe 4. Ezra Mam, if he holds a spot, 5. Dylan Brown 6. Lomax 7. Mulatalo 8. Azetas maybe 9. And Nico Hines, I don't think I'd be getting him in round 17, but potentially 10. But realistically, I'm looking at least 8 players I think that I can get there, maybe 9 players. So I'm looking in a decent spot already for round 17, which is why I don't mind going a little bit early on the trades for Mam and then Mulatalo, and then maybe save trades next week or the week after if I can, and just try to maybe save my last boost as well for a Ryan Pappenhausen. That's my early thoughts at the moment, and to do that, I'd probably have to sell Ezra Mam, Cooler, and maybe boost to sell one of my other higher price guys to get someone like Pappenhausen. That's the rough plan at the moment. But yeah, we'll come again on Friday with another video or maybe a live stream if I can do that, just to kind of wrap up also State of Origin Game 1 and answer any of your last minute questions as well before lockout. But going to end the video there, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. See you all in the next one.